Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, there are countless community groups that are making a difference in Elmwood Transcona each and every day, and I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize some of their efforts and achievements. For 50 years, the Transcona Pipe Band has showcased our Scottish-Canadian community's heritage with innovative bagpiping and drumming presentations that have captured the imaginations of audiences at home and around the world. I'd like to acknowledge Dave Stewart and the numerous parent volunteers that devote their precious time and energy to this respected Transcona institution. The Together in Elmwood Parent-Child Coalition and the Elmwood East Kildonan Active Living Centre are two other organizations that provide valuable programming to the community. These groups play an integral role in improving the quality of life of local residences and especially youth and seniors. I am glad to recognize Lalani Esteban and Con Gislason for their hard work and commitment to supporting our community members, young and old, to live up to their fullest potential. I wish to thank these groups and the many others for all that they do to build a better community for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And the Honourable Member for York South Weston.
Mr. Speaker, winter is finally behind us. In York South Weston, this cold, harsh season was made warmer and brighter by a dedicated group of volunteers who, for the third year, ran the Mount Dennis Outdoor Community Skating Rink in Piran Park. I was delighted to host a family day skating party there. Over 400 individuals learned to skate at the rink this past season. Nearly 900 used the free skate loan program. The rink continued its fine tradition of making a positive difference in the community, one smile and one skating lesson at a time. With a tip of my toque, I'd like to congratulate rink coordinator Simon Chamberlain, who received a Volunteer Toronto Award for his outstanding efforts, and Ice Master Guy Ruggieri and his over 40 volunteers who gave generously of their time to make this grassroots initiative a smashing success. Margaret Mead said, "A small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." That's a fitting tribute to the Mount Dennis volunteers.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon and Humboldt.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, a fire broke out at the Irene and Leslie Dubé Centre for Mental Health, creating thick smoke. After having to retreat from the building several times due to the smoke, two of Saskatoon Health Region's security team members, Chris Clark and Tyler Campbell, bravely rescued a trapped female patient from a burning room in the centre. It was a scary situation, but we knew someone was in there and we needed to get them out, so we were going to do whatever we could to make that happen, Clark said. Fortunately, the fire was isolated to a single room and no one was seriously injured, thanks in part to the actions of these two men. This March the 6th, both Corporal Clark and Mr. Campbell received Medals of Bravery from Governor-General David Johnstone for their part in this rescue. Corporal Clark and Mr. Campbell, on behalf of the House of Commons and the citizens of Saskatoon Humboldt, I would like to extend our thanks. Your bravery and concern for the needs of others are an example for us all. You represent the best of Canada.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Sydney Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize a renowned Cape Bretoner, William Bull Marsh, who recently passed away over the weekend. Bull was born in Waterford on January 21st, 1922. After serving 4 years during the Navy in World War II, Bull went to work in the Waterford's No. 12 colliery. Then he transferred to No. 16, where he began his work with the United Mine Workers of America. In 1958, he was elected president of District 26 and held that position for 22 consecutive years. He was the longest-serving president in the District 26 history. In 1965, there were 6,500 miners working in Cape Breton, and Bull played a major role in securing their livelihoods. He had an amazing talent as a speaker. In his leisure time, you would see him fishing, hunting, or training his Labrador retrievers. Giving the miners a fair deal is what Bull stood for. His impact on the community was remarkable, and he will be fondly remembered for many more years to come.
The Honourable Member for Langley.
Mr. Speaker, this morning at a press conference on Parliament Hill, Canadians from all walks of life called on the government to protect religious freedoms in Canada. Canada is recognized as a country that advocates for human rights and religious freedoms internationally. Canada's excellent international reputation is due to our government's strong stand on human rights and the outstanding work of Canada's Ambassador for Religious Freedoms. We also need to focus on the religious freedoms in Canada to protect the charter rights of all Canadians. Religious freedoms are integral to the fabric of the Canadian identity. It's at the core of who we are as a tolerant and pluralistic society. It's central to our culture, our history, and has shaped us as a nation. Mr. Speaker, recent intolerant attacks on religious freedoms in Canada are being condemned. I call on all members of this House to commit themselves to protect our religious freedoms. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Laval, Les Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with great pleasure that I rise today in this House, March 25th, to commemorate a Greek's national holiday. In addition to being the very founders of democracy, philosophy, and theatre, the Greek people have provided proof time and time again over the course of history of their resilience, courage, desire to exist and to be. You know, Mr. Speaker, I have the good fortune of having one of the largest Greek communities in Quebec in my riding of Laval-Les Îles. So it's with pleasure that I invite my fellow citizens from Laval, but also all of my colleagues in this House, to participate in the various activities and festivities organized by the Greater Montreal Greek community on the weekend. Activities I will participate in with pride. I would also like to invite you to the parade, which will take place on Jean Talon Street in Montreal. Year after year, we see the vibrant Greek culture in my riding. Long live the Greek people of Laval, Quebec, and Canada. Long live Greece.
The Honourable Member for Richmond
Mr.
Hill.
Speaker, today marks the 194th anniversary of the great rebellion of the Greek people against the Ottoman Empire, liberating a nation after almost 400 years of illegal occupation. On this March 25th and throughout this week, Canadians of Hellenic descent will be celebrating this National Day of Independence with parades and community events across Canada, including Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, and many more. In my riding of Richmond Hill, the Hellenic Canadian community of York region will be hosting a Greek school celebration at the Hellenic Academy of York, located at Pleasantville Public School, with student performances including poems, songs, and traditional Greek dances. Mr. Speaker, we salute all Canadians of Greek heritage during this time of celebration and recognize their important and positive contributions to Canada. I would like to wish everyone in York regions, throughout Canada, and indeed throughout the world, a very happy Greek Independence Day. Zito 25 Martiu. Χρόνια πολλά. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to sincerely congratulate the Orangeville Colonel Fitzgerald Branch 233 Royal Canadian Legion on its 80th anniversary. Wow. Since 1935, this exemplary Legion branch has been an integral member of our community through its extraordinary efforts to ensure that the imperative act of remembrance has been passed from generation to generation. Furthermore, this tremendous organization has continued to dedicate itself to enriching our community by sponsoring youth groups such as Girl Guides, escorting veterans to and from medical appointments, hosting the annual Senior Christmas Lunch, as well as public events such as Canada Day, Founders Day, and of course Remembrance Day. This Saturday, the Orangeville Legion will be hosting its anniversary celebration, so that this excellent time for all of us to recognize and thank this outstanding Legion for its exceptional service to our community and country.
The Honourable Member for Newton North Delta.
Mr. Speaker, in keeping with the Conservative government's constant mismanagement of the temporary foreign worker program, next Wednesday a large number of temporary foreign workers, this government won't actually tell us how many, must leave Canada. Among them workers who have already filed applications for permanent residency and are at present waiting for an answer. Mr. Speaker, these workers followed the rules. They came to Canada, worked hard, and contributed to our economy. This government changed the rules midstream. Based on an arbitrary deadline, they are going to send these workers away. It's unfair and it's heartless. Mr. Speaker, we are calling on the Conservative government to allow temporary foreign workers who have submitted an application for permanent residency to be able to stay in Canada as their applications are reviewed and answered. We are also calling on this government to take immediate steps to restore pathways to citizenship for all temporary foreign workers as part of a full review of the badly mismanaged temporary foreign worker program.
The honourable member for Brampton Springdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mothers and fathers should be able to make the important decisions that affect their own children. That's why our new family tax cut and enhanced universal child care benefit will give 100% of families with kids an average of nearly $2,000 per child. That's nearly $12,000 per child over their 6 years of age. What do we hear from that side of the House, Mr. Speaker? We hear new taxes, high debt, and the removal of all of these benefits we've brought forward to help Canadian families. Canadians don't want their money funneled into bureaucratic black holes. They don't want higher taxes. Mr. Speaker, they need tax relief and support that they can use as they see fit. And that's exactly what we're delivering on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Deputy Alfred Pellin.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellin. Mr. Speaker, despite its hard work on achieving gender equality at all levels, the Laval Status of Women Dialogue Table has noted that there are still many stumbling blocks when it comes to the representation of women on decision-making bodies. This disappointing finding is even more disappointing when we see the government's lack of action on this fact. In 2012, the government committed to creating an advisory council with a mandate to promote the participation of women on boards, public and private alike. Unfortunately, the long-awaited report has still not been released. We could have taken action by supporting the bill standing in the name of the member for Charlevoix-Haute-Saint-Charles that sought to increase representation by women on boards, but the Conservatives instead preferred the status quo. Mr. Speaker, it's high time to go forward and to ensure that the women of tomorrow will be able to fully contribute to our society using all of their capabilities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Pickering, Scarborough East.
Mr. Speaker, our government is keeping our pledge to strengthen support to Canada's veterans and their families. Recently, the Minister of Veteran Affairs announced changes that will ensure the earning loss benefit is calculated in the same way for Reserve Force veterans as it is for regular force veterans. Mr. Speaker, this is about respect for reservists. This is also about families, as the families of our reserves will have the confidence of knowing they too will benefit in the event of their reserve veteran is seriously injured or killed in the line of duty. Canada's reserves form a crucial component of our armed forces and served our country proudly in Afghanistan. Our Conservative government knows this change is just the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mount Royal.
Mr. Speaker, I recently returned from a moving trip to South Africa on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, the iconic moral compass of the anti-apartheid movement that inspired the creation of a free, democratic, egalitarian and non-racial South Africa with Nelson Mandela, our honorary Canadian citizen, as its first president. I had occasion to meet with Susan Shabangu, South Africa's minister responsible for women on the eve of International Women's Day, whose message was that empowering women was empowering Africa, and indeed it is equally true that empowering women is empowering Canada. I also met with Minister of Justice Cecilio Michael Masutha, discussing the contribution of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and Canadian jurisprudence to South African constitutionalism. And I met with Minister of the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, on the importance of a human rights foreign policy. Mr. Speaker, there's a great potential for a Canada-South Africa partnership in the area of women's rights, constitutionalism, and international justice, and where both our countries and peoples will be the beneficiaries. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Mississauga, Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, manufacturing in Southern Ontario remains critical to our nation's economy and long-term prosperity. And since we came to office, we've taken action to support manufacturing and all the jobs it supports in Southern Ontario and across Canada. Mr. Speaker, while our government continues to create and stand up for jobs in the manufacturing sector, the leader of the Liberal Party has been very clear in saying, and I quote, "A large part of it is transitioning away from manufacturing-based employment as a driver of the economy." Well, these comments are further proof that the Liberal leader is an economic novice who is not capable of managing the Canadian economy in a still fragile global economy. Canadians deserve better, That's why our government will continue to focus on jobs, fostering economic growth, and ensuring long-term prosperity for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister offered us a fine speech trying to sell us a long, ill-defined and costly war. The Prime Minister favors military intervention over humanitarian assistance. And the figures speak for themselves. Since the start of 2014, the government has committed $100 million to Iraqis affected by the conflict, but the war on the ground has already cost $122 million, and that's just a small portion of the total cost. Remember that the Canadian mission in Libya ended up costing 6 times more than the initial estimates, and with the extension of operations, it will cost hundreds of millions more. But at the same time, there have been no announcements by the government to increase assistance for Iraq and the region. The motion that we proposed yesterday, didn't even include any humanitarian action. In the NDP, we choose people over weapons. The Honourable Member for Lobinière-Chutes-la-Chaudière. Mr. Speaker, the terrorist death cult of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant has targeted Canada by name. My constituents from Chutes-la-Chaudière, Lobinière, believe it's essential that ISIL be degraded to the point that they no longer represent a threat to Canada. Already, thanks to the Royal Canadian Air Force and to our coalition partners, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant is on the defensive in areas they once held. Our government recognizes that it's in Canada's national interest to participate in the global fight against the jihadi terrorism. The NDP and Liberal leaders do not take the threat of jihadi terrorism seriously. They're out of step with the international community and would pull Canada out of the global fight against jihadi terrorism. I am proud that Canada is doing its part to counter the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
Senator, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Foreign Affairs Minister claimed that Canada's legal basis for bombing in Syria was, quote, the same basis as the Americans, unquote. The United States' justification for war in Syria is that they're defending the Iraqi government. Does the Prime Minister stand by that?
The right honourable.
Mr. Speaker, I think I've already made it very clear that Canada will pursue its air campaign in Syria on the same legal basis that our allies have been pursuing that campaign without challenge for the past several months. Our position, Mr. Speaker, is that ISIL should be given no safe refuge in Syria. The fact that Canada and our allies strongly oppose the Assad regime is, of course, absolutely no reason to allow ISIL safe haven in Canada, in Syria, from which it could launch attacks against us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
But precisely in Samantha Power's letter to His Excellency Ban Ki-moon on September 23rd, she says that that is the American justification, that they're helping Iraq, and it's at the request of Iraq that they're going into Syria. Donc la question se pose.
So the question that has to be asked today here, Mr. Speaker, is has Canada received, yes or no, a formal request for military intervention in Syria from the Iraqi government? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I can just repeat my answer. The Government of Canada will pursue ISIL in Syria on the same basis as our allies have been doing for many months now, Mr. Speaker. That has not been questioned. This legal basis has been established. We accept it, and the government of Iraq has expressed its support for our actions and the actions of our allies. And, Mr. Speaker, our motivation is to ensure the safety of our country against this terrorist caliphate. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Donc, la réponse.
So the answer is no. they have never received a request from Iraq for intervention in Syria, unlike the Americans, who noted that in their letter to the United Nations.
Mr. Speaker, because the Prime Minister says he's following the U.S. model here. The United States wrote to the Secretary General as required under Article 51 of the UN Charter and laid out their legal case for their planned intervention in Syria. Has the Prime Minister written to the United Nations laying out Canada's justification for their planned intervention in Syria?
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the government is pursuing this action on exactly the same legal basis as its allies. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what point the leader of the NDP is ultimately making. If he is suggesting, Mr. Speaker, that there is any significant legal risk to lawyers from ISIL taking the government of Canada to court and winning. The government of Canada's view is that the chances of that, Mr. Speaker, are negligible. We are clearly defending not only the wider regional interests, but the interests
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Extraordinary, Mr. Speaker, living in a Canada where that sort of idiocy passes for argument.
I know the Honourable Leader of the Opposition will want to avoid using terminology like that can cause a great deal of disorder. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Today, the Punjab Legislative Assembly passed a unanimous motion calling on Canada to apologize for the Komagata Maru incident. The Komagata Maru is a dark moment in Canadian history. The ship was turned away simply because its passengers were from India. Upon returning home, many were arrested or killed. Will the Prime Minister finally do the right thing, acknowledge this horrific tragedy, and apologize in this House for the Komagata Maru?
That Canada and Canadians have appropriately acknowledged that incident for some time. Mr. Speaker, though, I would be remiss if I didn't return to the previous exchange. And while I obviously won't repeat the terminology used by the Leader of the NDP, if his idea of protecting Canada's national interests is that you don't do everything in your power, legally, militarily, and in terms of cooperation with allies, to defend the interests of this country against the terrorist caliphate. He and I obviously have very different ideas of what the national interests of this country are.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Prime Minister of Canada thinks he's above international law also. He's not, and Canada is not. That's all we got.
Leaders from around the world are taking up the cause of Raif Badawi, the Saudi writer sentenced to 10 years in prison and 1,000 lashes for writing a pro-democracy blog. I have met with Ensaif Haida, Mr. Badawi's wife, who lives in Sherbrooke with their 3 children. Her courage is incredibly inspiring, Mr. Speaker. With so much support for Mr. Badawi, what is the Prime Minister waiting for to ensure he is freed so that he can be reunited with his family here in Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Myself and the Government of Canada have already expressed our opinions on the case of Mr. Badawi. We are in favour of his liberation.
I do want to return to the previous exchange. If the Leader of the NDP is suggesting for a moment that there is any case in the international legal community that stands behind ISIL, he is not only wrong, Mr. Speaker. The international community has united in opposition of this group. 6 members of the United Nations have united to confront this international terrorist organization. Canada is working with them. Canada is working not only with people from our own political family, but liberals and social democrats across the world, and taking a strong stand to say this group.
The Honourable Member for Papineau.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's motion explicitly leaves the door open to expanding our combat operations outside of Iraq and Syria against terrorist entities aligned with ISIL. Is the Prime Minister considering sending our bombers or special forces into Yemen or Libya or against Boko Haram in sub-Saharan Africa?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The answer is no, Mr. Speaker. We are not. I thought we were clear on that yesterday, but I'm glad to be clear on it again today. But let me be clear. Where we face organizations, as we do today in Iraq and Syria, that are establishing caliphates, large territorial areas from which they are threatening to launch terrorist attacks against this country, Canada will work with our allies in every single case where that ever occurs to make sure we protect the security of this country.
The motion tabled yesterday by the Prime Minister opened the door to an expansion of the combat mission to other countries beyond Iraq and Syria. Can the Prime Minister reassure this House that he will not use this motion, yesterday's motion, to justify sending military resources to fight ISIL elsewhere in the world? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, yesterday we were clear. We will fight ISIL in its safe haven in Syria, and we will continue to fight ISIL in Iraq. But, Mr. Speaker, it's different from the Liberal Party. Its position is absolutely incomprehensible. They support some military missions, but not others. Mr. Speaker, we are very clear. We always work with our allies to ensure the safety of our country. The Honourable Member for Papineau.
Mr. Speaker, the economic news for the middle class is getting worse, not better. StatsCan just said that the past 15 months have been the weakest period of growth they have ever recorded. There are continued fears of a recession in Alberta, and today, TD forecasted that the unemployment rate will rise this year. Yet the Prime Minister's only plan remains a tax break for the rich. How will that solve any of these problems?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we know very well that we're in a fragile and uncertain global economy, and of course this country is being impacted by the dramatic fall in oil prices. Mr. Speaker, that is only more reason to stick to the plan that has generated 1.2 million net new jobs since the end of the recession, to lower people's taxes, to make targeted investments in the Canadian economy, and run a very strong fiscal ship, Mr. Speaker. Nobody in the world, other than the leader of the Liberal Party, believes the solutions of any of these problems is to hike taxes on the middle class.
The Honourable Member for
Mr. Speaker, this week, witness after witness has come forward to lay out the critical flaws in Bill C-51. Last night, we heard from retired Supreme Court Justice John Major, who testified that the judicial warrant the Conservatives are fond of calling oversight is simply not oversight. Major said, in order for there to be proper information sharing, there needs to be oversight at the back end. Mr. Speaker, why is the concept of more powers, more oversight such a hard concept for this minister to understand?
Mr. Speaker, as you know, the international jihadi movement has declared war on Canada and its allies. Canadians are being targeted by jihadi terrorists simply because these terrorists hate our society and the values it represents. Jihadi terrorism is not a human right, Mr. Speaker. It is an act of war. And regarding oversight, Mr. Speaker, we believe strongly that third-party, non-partisan, independent, expert oversight of our national security agencies is a much better model than a political intervention in the process. Mr. Speaker, you know there are key powers of the new legislation are subject to judicial review, judicial authorization. We agree with the Supreme Court that CERC is a best model for Canadian. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Scotland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's just the opposite of what Justice Major told us last night. But I'm not asking the minister to take my word for things here. I'm asking to listen to the legions of witnesses opposed to this bad bill. Even the Internet's Mozilla Foundation has come out swinging against the sweeping provisions of C-51, calling it, quote, an approach to cybersecurity that only serves to undermine user trust, threaten the openness of the web, and to reduce security of the internet and its users. What is it going to take for the minister to get the message that sacrificing the rights and freedoms of Canadians won't make Canadians safer?
Mr. Speaker, if the member would really listen to Justice Mayer and the Air India Commission, he would support the provision in Bill C-51 regarding information sharing. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-51 is the most important national security legislation since the 9/11 era. It is designed for the 9/11 era, a new legislation for a new era in terms of security threats. Who said that, Mr. Speaker? Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. Where was the member when the witness said that, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Alfred Bellin. Yesterday at committee, we heard from still more expert witnesses who take issue with C-51. The Ontario Provincial Police Deputy Commissioner responsible for counterterrorism, Scott Todd, has warned the government that C-51 will give additional responsibility to police forces without any new resources. Police forces will have no choice but to redirect resources currently used for fighting organized crime. What is the minister's plan to ensure that our police officers continue to do their jobs? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, over the last 9 years, our government has increased resources for the RCMP 7 times. In total, that's an increase of over a third in the budget for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to count on the support of the NDP for our police forces, and we will continue to follow this path to ensure that our police forces have the necessary resources to fight terrorists and also that they have the tools that they need, and that is why Bill C-51 is on the table. The Honourable Member for Alfred Bellin. It's not only police officers who are concerned about the consequences of C-51. The government of Quebec has denounced the fact that C-51 will give CSIS, and I quote, such vast powers, including the possibility to take certain actions that violate the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Conservative majority at committee has refused to hear from Quebec ministers. Why does the government refuse to hear from those who will have to apply their half-baked bill? Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, the main role of a government is to ensure the safety of its citizens against a terrorist threat, and that is exactly what we are doing. We are doing that, Mr. Speaker, in cooperation with provincial and territorial governments, and that is why I have had a number of meetings, including with Minister Thériault from Quebec and with other provincial representatives, and we will continue to make sure that police forces and intelligence services work together to ensure the protection of citizens, and we agree with the government of Quebec on that.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, a report published today by the Environmental Law Centre of the University of Victoria raises very troubling questions about the so-called political activities audits being undertaken by the Canada Revenue Agency. It analyzes the alarming lack of clarity in the rules governing political activities for charities. It's now clear the government must immediately suspend these audits and fix the broken system. Will the Conservatives finally put a stop to this and clean up the mess they've created?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
Speaker, that member knows full well that CRA audits occur at arm's length from government. They are conducted free of any political interference or motivation. The CRA Charities Directorate acts independently. The rules regarding charities and political activities are long-standing, and charities must respect the law. Mr. Speaker, it really is shameful that this member continues to politicize a matter that is free of any political interference or motivation.
Mr. Speaker, the credibility of the Canada Revenue Agency is at stake. The Conservatives are spending $13.4 million of taxpayers' money to target charities the Conservatives don't like, at the same time as they're cutting $200 million from the overall budget of the CRA. It's very troubling. The recommendations in this report deserve serious attention. Instead, we just hear more denials from this minister. But, Mr. Speaker, she is responsible for the credibility of the CRA. Will she ever take action?
The Honourable Minister
Speaker, as the Director General of the Charities Directorate has stated, and I quote, "As I have made clear in the past, the process for identifying which charities will be audited for any reason is handled by the Directorate itself and is not subject to political direction." End quote. The CRA audits 1% of the charitable sector every year. This means, on average, only 0.4% of all charities end up having their status revoked for whatever reason. Mr. Speaker, the only politics in this story are the shameful political motivations of the NDP.
Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, we've already heard the minister's empty talking points, but the facts laid out in the report from the University of Victoria Environmental Law Centre are very troubling. 52 organizations, mainly environmental and human rights groups, are being monitored by the Canada Revenue Agency. It's a political witch hunt. Purely political, Mr. Speaker. Will the Conservatives get their priorities straight and maybe fight tax evasion instead of persecuting charities? Honourable Minister of National Revenue. The member knows very well that CRA audits are independent and without any political interference. The rules for charitable organizations and for political activities have been in place for a very long time. Charitable organizations must respect the law. The CRA is legally responsible for ensuring that charitable donations made by Canadians are used for charitable reasons. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne-Blainville. When the CRA isn't wasting its time persecuting environmental groups, it's mixing up addresses and sending envelopes full of personal information to the wrong people. In 2014, CRA employees mixed up 3,800 addresses. That means over 1 million Canadians have had their private information compromised since the Conservatives have come to power. What is the government waiting for? When will they fix this problem? Honourable Minister.
I agree with Canadians who rightfully expect that their personal information should be protected when dealing with the CRA. We expect the CRA to have a close working relationship with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and to act on all his recommendations. 95% of the reported privacy issues are related to misdirected mail, as the CRA handles over 115 million pieces of correspondence every year. That said, we expect the CRA to improve on how it deals with the personal information of Canadians.
Timmins, James Bay. Mr. Speaker, check this out. In the last 2 years, the Canada Revenue Agency has had more data breaches than all other government agencies combined over the last 10 years. Whoa. Now, that minister just doesn't seem to understand the importance of protecting the personal financial information of Canadians. So, simple question. Why is she using the tax department as the political enforcement arm of the Conservative Party? Why is she attacking bird watchers, environmentalists, and Oxfam when she should be dealing with the appalling record of lost, stolen, and compromised data that's happening in her department under her incompetent nose?
Mr. Speaker, 95% of the privacy incidents reported by CRA are related to misdirected mail. That being said, more serious incidents related to lost or stolen data and unauthorized accesses are completely unacceptable. My expectation is that CRA work closely with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and implement all his recommendations to ensure confidential information remains protected. And as I said before, Mr. Speaker, that party knows there is no political interference in charitable audits, as has been stated over and over again.
The Honourable Member for Toronto Centre.
Mr. Speaker, over the past week, both the OECD and TD have sharply cut their economic outlook for Canada. TD's new forecast for 2015 has Canada losing $22 billion from our economy compared to the bank's projections from just 3 months ago. TD warns unemployment will rise, wage growth will stall, and household debt will mount. When will the finance minister stop playing hide and seek with this House and personally tell us what his plan is to reverse this painful economic decline?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
It's called the Low Tax Plan for Jobs, and it's working, Mr. Speaker. 1.2 million net new jobs, with 85% of them in the full-time category and 2/3 of them in high-wage sectors. Now, the Liberal plan is to raise taxes on those who create jobs and to raise taxes on middle-class families. Mr. Speaker, that would send shockwaves throughout our economy. It would kill jobs and set families back. We won't let them do it.
I'll ask members on the far end of the chamber to come to order when the ministers answer the question. The Honourable Member for Bourassa.
Mr. Speaker, the mayors of Montreal and Toronto met today. And do you know what they talked about? Infrastructure. And you'll remember that Jim Flaherty himself said that it's the best way to stimulate hiring and growth. Since then, the Conservatives have cut spending in this area by 90%, and reports have demonstrated how precarious employment is in Canada. This government has no plan, and the Minister of Finance is missing in action. When will the Conservatives listen to the mayors and undo the cuts to infrastructure? The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I met with the Mayor of Montreal, I've met with the Mayor of Toronto, and do you know what they talked to me about? They talked to me about infrastructure, and they congratulated us for the plan that we've put in place, the biggest infrastructure plan in the history of this country, Mr. Speaker. That's why I met with them.
The Honourable Member for Trinity Spadina.
They like the plan, but they'd rather have the money. The mayors of Toronto and Montreal met today. The cities are often seen as rivals, but what's got them united? I'll tell you what's got them united. Mayor Tory and Mayor Coderre, the great cities have been united because they got absolutely nothing from the federal government. Nothing from the federal government for the last 2 years from the new infrastructure build fund. Nothing. That's what's got the cities united. They do, however, have a lot of photo ops. They've got a lot of billboards, but nothing when it comes to a check being cashed. When will this government send a budget to the cities? Why won't the finance minister come out from underneath his desk, quit hiding, and deliver a budget that funds infrastructure, creates jobs, and creates growth?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Like we have said before, Mr. Speaker, the new Building Canada is very important. The infrastructure plan is there. And just about gas tax fund, Mr. Speaker, just to explain, is a former city councillor, probably he already knows that, but I will repeat that. 2 times a year, in July and November, we transfer to the provinces and territories the money for the gas tax fund. That's $2 billion a year that have been transferred. Municipalities have to ask to the province, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, this government's utter disregard for veterans continues to take its toll. Over the past 3 years, the Conservatives have cut the number of case managers for veterans by 20%. Those who are left are struggling to deal with unmanageable caseloads. Mr. Speaker, this has a major impact on the quality of care and services that veterans receive. Veterans and members of Parliament warned that this would be the outcome of Conservative cuts. Why did the Conservatives fail to listen? When will they make amends?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to make investments in frontline services and supporting our case managers for veterans. Mr. Speaker, by the end of this year, due to our investments, veterans and their families will have up to 26 operational stress injury clinics scattered throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. In the last few weeks, I've also expressed our interest to bring out the retirement income security benefit. We're bringing in respect and parity for our reserve forces, Mr. Speaker, and we're providing the family caregiver relief benefit, Mr. Speaker. We're moving to support our veterans, support their families. I hope they finally stop the rhetoric and get behind it.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
The minister doesn't really get what respect for veterans means, Mr. Speaker. Our soldiers have suffered trauma when they were protecting our country, and they deserve to have access to the services they need. But the government went ahead and reduced the number of case managers from 309 to 254. That's a 20% cut. 20%. People who need to help our soldiers have too much to do. So when will the government change this decision? The Honourable Minister.
No, in the last 2 weeks, we've actually expanded benefits and programs for our most seriously injured. We've made a major expansion for eligibility to the permanent impairment allowance, Mr. Speaker. For our critically injured with their families, we're giving the family caregiver relief benefit, Mr. Speaker. This is real benefits that will come to this House, and I hope that member will stand up in this House and vote for these outstanding benefits for veterans and their families.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Yesterday, the parties in the House unanimously adopted the NDP motion to eliminate microbeads and end this pollution in our waterways. Now, we need to follow the example of the American states and other countries that have taken action. So what is the government's action plan to end the use of microbeads? This needs to be done. We need to protect our environment. The Honourable Minister, Parliamentary Secretary. The motion yesterday was unanimously supported. We will launch a scientific study on the effect of microbeads on the environment, and the results of this expert study will influence our plan. We will come up with an innovative management plan so that we can set priorities and make sure that microbeads are a priority and that we protect Canadians. We will be working closely with others to deal with microbeads, and we will work on this until next summer.
Well, no, Mr. Speaker, we didn't agree to more study. We agreed to action. Was clear, and it called on the government to list microbeads as a toxic substance under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. But instead of promising real action, all the Conservatives are saying is they're going to try to add it to the agenda of a meeting. But that's not what we voted on. So do the Conservatives plan to stand by their vote, or are they just trying to weasel their way out of responsibility for protection of the environment?
Mr. Speaker, the only weaseling is by the NDP that won't respect science. What we are going to be doing, we're taking a leadership role when it comes to protecting our environment. Environment Canada is initiating a scientific review to assess the effects of microbeads on the environment. And it's this expert advice that will inform future potential actions on microbeads. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now that we are balancing our budget, we're helping all families balance theirs. On that side of the House, the Liberal leader says he will raise taxes on every family. And the only ones who benefit from the NDP plan are big bureaucracies. Could the Minister of Employment and Social Development please tell us what our government is doing to help all Canadian families?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today, I was at the Sandy Hill Child Care Centre celebrating the legislation we will introduce Friday to increase the universal child care benefit, those monthly checks that people get, to almost $2,000 for preschoolers and $720 for kids 6 through 17. Now, the Liberals and NDP have voted against these initiatives in the past. They're going to oppose them again. We know they would take that money away to give it to the so-called experts. We're going to give that money to the 8 million real child care experts out there. Their names are Mom and Dad.
Honourable member for Churchill.
Chiefs last week in Calgary, the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs said that Indigenous men are responsible for 70%.
Order. The member for Churchill now has the floor. Other members who wish to persist in this, they can go sit on the very comfortable couches in the lobby, and there they would only torment the whip's assistants instead of other members. The honourable member for Churchill has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was revealed today that during a meeting with chiefs last week in Calgary, the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs said that Indigenous men are responsible for 70% of the murders of Indigenous women. He told them that this was unreleased RCMP data. But we all know that that number quoted is not backed up by any of the RCMP reports. So will the minister stand in this House and release the data based on which he made his claim? Or will he get up and tell us that he made this number up to suit their discriminatory agenda?
The Honourable Minister of Aboriginal Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, indeed, last week I did a tour of the prairies and I met with several First Nation chiefs and councillors and stakeholders to discuss a wide range of issues. And while I don't disclose specifics of closed-door meeting, I can assure the honourable member that the discussions were productive and our government will continue to work with First Nations to address these issues. Thank you.
The honourable member for Northwest Territories.
This government will never learn from its mistakes, Mr. Speaker. After ramming through their plan to do away with regional environmental boards in the Northwest Territories, the Conservatives now stalled by an injunction handed to them by the Supreme Court of the Northwest Territories. And they will likely face the same kind of legal action from Yukon First Nations over Bill S6. When will the Conservatives get it? Gutting environmental protection, altering land claims agreements, just simply lead to more uncertainty and legal actions.
The Honourable Minister of Aboriginal
Affairs. I guess I missed the question. Well, Mr. Speaker, unlike previous
members asked the question, the minister's in the process of answering it. The Honourable Minister of Aboriginal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike previous Liberal governments, this Conservative government has made the long-term prosperity of Canada's North and North North a priority. And this includes, Mr. Speaker, fostering economic development, among others, by improving Yukon and Nunavut regulatory systems while protecting our environmental heritage. That's what S6 does, and I encourage them to support it.
Absolutely.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, a University of Montreal study confirms that the Conservative change to the retirement age will increase inequality among Canadian seniors and increase poverty in Canada. Now, we know for sure that raising the retirement age from 65 to 67 will just defer spending. Basically, this measure will only make the situation of seniors worse. So why is the minister insisting on this reform when he knows it is pointless? Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, the only plan that the Liberals and the NDP have for seniors is to raise their taxes. We know that seniors do not need to be more heavily taxed. This is why we have freed over 300,000 seniors from having to pay tax by raising the amount that they can bring in without having to pay tax. We are helping seniors have tax-free income.
Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Seniors, because this Conservative government has been absolutely cynical in its treatment of seniors. According to a recent study from the University of Montreal, raising the age of eligibility for old age security will significantly increase poverty and inequality among Canadian seniors. This will have a serious negative impact on the health and life expectancy of poor seniors. Will the Minister for Seniors stand in her place and tell Canadians why she is insisting on pursuing this offensive policy that will increase poverty and destroy quality of life for our most vulnerable seniors?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Speaker, the last thing that Canada's seniors who have worked hard all their lives need is a tax increase from the Liberals and the NDP, both of which have promised to eliminate pension splitting, to bring in a carbon tax which would raise the price of all the household goods and heating and utilities that seniors have to pay and would push them back into poverty. We have lifted 380,000 seniors off the tax rolls altogether by raising the personal exemption. We brought in the tax-free savings account that allows them to have tax-free income to put right in their pockets. We have cut every tax that the government collects to leave more money in the pockets of our seniors, and we're going to keep doing it.
Welcome, member for Vancouver Quadron.
Speaker, despite the minister's shabby rhetoric today, despite his repeated assurances that spending cuts at Veterans Affairs will not affect veterans, he's wrong. Since 2011, Veterans Affairs has cut 1 out of every 4 staff members right across the country, and these layoffs are definitely affecting frontline services. In fact, this government cut almost 1 of every 5 caseworkers, leaving a smaller group struggling under their workload. Veterans are the ones paying the price, and I will have news for this minister. If they do not have a caseworker, they will not get to an operational stress clinic. Will the minister reverse this callous neglect of our veterans and rehire the
Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to make investments on frontline services and work to make sure that our caseworkers that are working with veterans and their families have the support they need and the allocation of cases so that they don't have too much burden from some of the challenges with mental health cases. And those cases, Mr. Speaker, are being assisted by our rapid rollout of operational stress injury clinics from coast to coast, Mr. Speaker. And in the last few weeks, I've announced some benefits, and in many ways, Mr. Speaker, we're fixing the gaps in the Liberal new veteran charter, Mr. Speaker. So I hope her rhetoric will be matched by her willingness to stand in this House and support veterans and their families.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the government set up a $200 million fund to support advanced manufacturing in Ontario. But as of now, they have not spent 1 penny.
Wow.
Since the government came to office, Ontario manufacturing jobs are down a staggering 25% and exports down 20%, yet they haven't spent a penny of the fund. Is the Prime Minister so disconnected from the economy that he no longer cares about struggling middle-class Canadians in the manufacturing sector?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, it's perfectly clear he's describing his own leader when it was the Liberal leader who said that, quote, Southern Ontario needs to, quote, transition away from manufacturing-based employment as a driver in the economy. That's what the Liberal leader said. By contrast, Mr. Speaker, you know, I visited Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto last week and visited some advanced manufacturing that we invested in, Mr. Speaker, some advanced manufacturing in Children's Hospital in robotics. 1 in 700 children are born with a cleft palate. Because of the investment that we've made in advanced manufacturing, this is technology that is protecting kids, stopping infection, fixing cleft palates, and we're going to sell this technology all over the world, creating jobs, protecting kids well into the future. That's what we do as a Conservative government.
The honourable member for New Westminster Coquitlam.
The Conservatives have mismanaged BC's herring fishery into a state of crisis. Without warning or consultation, the DFO opened a herring fishery near Bella Bella on the Central Coast. Local First Nations, the UFAW, and fishery experts have raised serious concerns about its sustainability. But this government refuses to listen. Why are the Conservatives ignoring experts and the Helslick First Nation and putting this herring fishery in jeopardy?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be clear. We do respect the right to protest. However, we expect that it be done without any threat to fishermen or their property. Science forecasts have shown that the Pacific herring stock abundance continues to support a moderate commercial harvest opportunities while meeting conservation objectives. The Pacific herring fishery is underway, Mr. Speaker. The openings are based on science and do follow the precautionary approach.
As they should.
The Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Mr. Speaker, we learned this morning that CN commissioned a student to repaint the Quebec City Bridge, it would cost $400 million or more. That's twice what the government thought when it promised $75 million in assistance, and that money was contingent on CN participating. Has the minister spoken with CN since this announcement? Does he know that, or did he know that CN was preparing this study? If so, what does he intend to do? When will the minister finally find a solution once and for all? The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, as the owner of the bridge, Canadian National is responsible for its maintenance and for its upgrade. But we've been very clear here on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. We have committed significant funding to repaint the Quebec Bridge. The province and the municipalities have also put forward money for that too, and we asked CN to come to the table on this specific project to commit the other funds that are necessary to get this project done.
And the honourable member for St. John.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the RCMP announced that they had arrested an individual in Prince Edward Island who had plans to commit acts of terrorism. The RCMP have confirmed that they had grounds to suspect that he intended to commit a terrorist offence. Can the Minister of Public Safety please update this House on this situation?
And the Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly appreciate the question from the Honourable Member from St. John, and I would like to thank the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for their work on this case and their other cases they're working on, Mr. Speaker. It is clear that terrorism remains a real threat to Canadians. That's why we've tabled the Anti-Terrorism Act 2015, Mr. Speaker, comme le cas est devant les tribunaux.
Since this case is before the courts, Mr. Speaker, I will allow the RCMP to do their work, but we will continue to bring in concrete measures to protect Canadians against terrorist threats.
Mr. Speaker, we understand that Canada has been invited by China to join its newly created Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The Liberal Party feels that there are good reasons for Canada to accept this invitation, which, as you know, is involved with funding of infrastructure projects in Asia. Now, we understand that the invitation is extended until the end of the month. We know that countries like France and Germany and Great Britain have joined the bank. Is the government seriously considering this invitation from China?
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our ties with China, both commercial as well as heritage, have improved dramatically. We've just recently announced the renminbi trading hub in Canada, which will help businesses, and we are continuing to look at this possible bank venture as well, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Surrey North.
Mr. Speaker, the government cannot continue to ignore the Kamagata-Maru tragedy. The Prime Minister has refused to agree to our demand for an apology in the House. It is a shameful moment in Canadian history that must be honoured with a formal apology from the Canadian government. Today, the Punjab Assembly passed a resolution seeking an apology from Canada. It is clear that until there is an apology, this wound cannot be healed. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister sidestepped this question earlier on today. Here's another opportunity for him. Will the government finally apologize for the Kamagata-Maru tragedy?
Mr. Speaker, the tragic events of the Kamagata-Maru truly are a regrettable chapter in Canada's history. That is why it was this Prime Minister and this government was the very first to acknowledge what happened to the passengers of the Kamagata-Maru on behalf of all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, it is this Conservative government that worked with the Casa Dewan Society to build a museum around this tragedy and also a monument, Mr. Speaker, to educate Canadians, a number of other projects to educate Canadians. And on the 100th anniversary of that tragedy, Mr. Speaker, Canada Post released a special stamp to further create awareness about this tragedy, Mr. Speaker. While we are educating and creating awareness about this tragedy, Mr. Speaker, they continue to play politics with it.
The Honourable Member for Miramichi.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that they can count on our government to deliver real results.
That's right.
To support job creation and economic growth, our Conservative government has been making record investments in infrastructure progress across projects across Canada.
Yes,
can the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Regional Minister for Prince Edward Island update this House on how our government is investing to support energy delivery to people.
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, last week our government announced we will invest over $50 million from the Green Infrastructure Fund for new electricity cables to Prince Edward Island. This is the most significant infrastructure project for the island since the Confederation Bridge. It will support jobs and economic growth by providing more power and cleaner energy to islanders. Years of Liberal governments have never delivered a cable, Mr. Speaker. That's all they've done there is talk. I'm extremely proud to be part of a Conservative government that's delivered to islanders.
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
If the Conservatives refuse to act, passenger services on the Algoma Central Railway will end on Tuesday. Northern Ontario business...
There's been a steady cacophony from the far end of the chamber, all question period. I was hoping that with a week and a half left in Lent, members may have given up heckling for Lent. Maybe we can get into Christmas spirit. It's 9 months from Christmas today, so they can think about that. But please, there's only a couple questions left. Let's come to order. The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
If the Conservatives refuse to act, passenger services on the Algoma Central Railway will end on Tuesday. Northern Ontario businesses and communities rely on this service to support local economy and hundreds of jobs. The working group has done their job and found a third party. With a little help from the federal government, passenger services on the ACR could be self-sustaining in 5 short years. Everyone is waiting for an answer. Why is the government dragging its feet? Will the minister commit to the future of this passenger service to ensure the survival of this vital economy?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me an opportunity to highlight the great work that our Member of Parliament on this side of the House has been doing on this particular matter, making sure that we have appropriate information. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, is that the information for this new line is with Transport Canada officials who have to review it to make sure in its entirety it's a safe operation. From there, they also have to make an application to the Canadian Transportation Review. So with those 2 pieces of information going forward, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to provide the House with updates as these things unfold.
The Honourable Member for Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and it relates to Canada's support for Ukraine. We all join the Prime Minister in condemning Putin's aggression, but the extent of Canada's involvement with Ukraine does not appear on the DFATE website. We learned through the media of RADARSAT-2 data being provided to Ukraine, initially over the objections of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of National Defence. And I hear that there may be a memorandum of understanding between Canada and Ukraine. I'd like the Prime Minister to confirm that and let this House know when it will be tabled with Parliament.
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear throughout this that Canada is standing with the people of Ukraine in the face of Vladimir Putin's military aggression. And we have made significant contributions directly to Ukraine. We've been part of the NATO assurance package, Mr. Speaker. Whether it takes 5 months or 50 years, we will stand with the people of Ukraine for their independence and their freedom.
Concludes question period for today. Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and on behalf of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, pursuant to Standing Order 32.2, I have the honour to table in both official languages the treaties entitled Amendments to Annex 3 of the Rotterdam Convention on the Prior Informed Consent Procedure for Certain Hazardous Chemicals and Pesticides in International Trade, adopted in Geneva 28th April to 10th of May 2013, and the second protocol amending the agreement between the Government of Canada and the Government of the People's Republic of China on air transport done at Beijing on 8th November 2014. An explanatory memorandum is included with each treaty.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Public Works.
Pursuant to Standing Order 36.8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 7 petitions.
Introduction of government bills. Déclaration des ministres.
Statements by ministers.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees. The Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to present in both official languages the 4th report of the Standing Joint Committee on Scrutiny of Regulations in relation to the review of statutory instruments.
Well done.
Introduction of private members' bills. Mr. Rathgaber, seconded by Mr. Sims, Bonavista, Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled